It's one of the big stories ever. The story of how we, Homo sapiens, went from being a localized African species to covering the entire planet. We walked out of our homeland and just kept going, across deserts, over mountains, through frozen tundras. It's an incredible achievement, and it raises a simple question. How? How did small groups of hunter-gatherers with nothing but stone tools and fire manage to navigate a world they'd never seen before? One of the most powerful and simple ideas is that we followed the animals. We didn't have maps. We didn't have a grand plan, but we had hunger, and animals were our food, our clothing, our tools. It makes sense that our story is tied to theirs. The question is, how true is it? Did we really just trail behind vast herds of mammoths and bison as they moved across the continents? The answer isn't a simple yes or no, it's more of a story about a deep, complicated relationship that defined our species for tens of thousands of years. It's a story of dependence, competition, and a shared journey. To understand the journey out, you first have to understand what life was like back in Africa, before anyone left. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were part of the African ecosystem. We weren't above it. We were right in the middle of it. We were prey as much as we were predators. A hominin wandering alone was a potential meal for a lion or a hyena. We learned to survive in a world of giants. Megafauna were everywhere: giant elephants, longhorned buffalo, huge elands. Our relationship with these animals was everything. We weren't big, powerful hunters at first. For a long time, we were likely scavengers. We watched the sky for vultures. We listened for the sounds of a lion's kill. Then we'd move in, cautiously, to steal what we could. We used simple stone tools to smash open bones for the rich marrow inside, something the big cats couldn't get to. This was our niche. We were the clever opportunists. Over time, we got better. We developed better tools, like sharpened stone points for spears. We learned to hunt in groups, using our intelligence and communication to take down animals much larger than ourselves. This was a game changer. We became formidable hunters. But our lives were still governed by the rhythms of the animals. We knew their habits, we knew where they went for water, we knew their migration patterns within the African landscape. Our survival depended on this intimate knowledge. We didn't just see a herd of antelope as a bunch of animals. We saw it as our future meals, our children's survival. This mindset, this deep-seated expertise in animal behavior, was the most important tool we packed for our trip out of Africa. So why leave at all? Africa was our home. We were adapted to it. The primary driver, as it so often is in nature, was climate. The Earth's climate has never been stable. It goes through long cycles of cold and warm, wet and dry. During certain periods, Africa became much drier. The lush savannas we depended on began to shrink. The Sahara Desert, for example, expanded massively, creating an enormous barrier. When the environment changes, everything has to adapt or move. As grasslands dried up, the great herds of grazers had to move to find fresh pasture. The animals that ate the grazers had to follow them, and we who ate both had to follow them too. It wasn't a conscious decision like a committee meeting where a chief decided, okay everyone, we're moving to Asia. It was a slow generational creep. A group might follow a herd a few miles further north one season than they ever had before because that's where the food was. Their children would then treat that new spot as their baseline. Generation after generation, this slow drift, driven by the search for food, could carry a population hundreds, then thousands of miles. The animals were our guide. They were our compass. They already knew where to find water. They knew the paths through difficult terrain. A herd of aurochs or wild horses would instinctively follow river valleys or natural passes through mountain ranges. By following them, we were piggybacking on generations of their accumulated knowledge of the landscape. And these weren't just random wanderings, they were migrations along what scientists sometimes call savanna corridors. During wetter periods, grasslands would expand out of Africa and into the Middle East. It was like a green carpet rolling out, inviting the great herds to expand their range. And we, in their wake, walked that same carpet. The most popular version of this story involves us as the ultimate big game hunters. Once we left Africa, we entered new lands, teeming with animals that had never seen clever, two-legged predators like us. Eurasia was packed with mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, and wild horses. These animals represented a massive food source. A single mammoth could feed a clan for weeks, or even months. It provided not just tons of meat, but a treasure trove of other resources. Its thick hide could be used to make tents and warm clothing, essential for surviving the colder climates outside of Africa. Its massive bones could form the framework of a shelter. Smaller bones and tusks could be carved into tools, needles, and even art. The fat could be rendered for fuel, providing light and heat in dark, cold caves. The sinew could be used as cordage for tying tools and sewing clothes. A mammoth wasn't just a meal, it was a one-stop survival kit. It's easy to see why we would have become specialists in hunting these creatures. The archaeological evidence supports this. All across Europe and Asia, we find ancient kill sites. These are places where our ancestors repeatedly ambushed and butchered large animals. We find spear points lodged among mammoth ribs. We find massive piles of bones at the base of cliffs, suggesting we drove herds over the edge. We find campsites littered with the remains of a single type of animal, like bison, indicating a deep focus on a particular species. Our ancestors weren't just opportunists anymore. They were strategists. They understood the seasonal migrations of these herds and set up camps along those routes, waiting for their food supply to come to them. In this sense, we weren't just following the animals, we were anticipating them. We were intersecting with their journey. But this big game hunter model might not be the whole story. There's another major theory about our dispersal, one that involves a different set of animals and a different path. This is the coastal route. Some scientists argue that one of the earliest, and perhaps most successful, migrations out of Africa didn't go overland through the grassy corridors. Instead, it hugged the coastlines. People moved along the Red Sea, around the Arabian Peninsula, along the coast of India, and all the way to Southeast Asia and eventually Australia. What was the appeal of the coast? It offered a different kind of bounty, a highly reliable and predictable one. Coastal ecosystems are incredibly rich. You have shellfish, like mussels and oysters, which are easy to gather and packed with protein. You have crabs, fish that get trapped in tidal pools, sea turtles, and seals. You have seabirds and their eggs. This collection of resources is sometimes called a seafood buffet. The key advantage of the strategy is that it's consistent. A herd of bison might get spooked and change its route one year, but the tides always come in and out. The shellfish are always in the intertidal zone. The skills needed to survive on a coastline in Africa are the exact same skills you'd need on a coastline in India. You know what to look for, you know where to find it. This would have allowed for a relatively rapid expansion. People could move from one river mouth or estuary to the next, secure in the knowledge that they'd find the same kinds of food they had at their last home. So in this version of the story, we weren't following mammoths. We were following the shoreline and the rich marine and coastal animals that lived there. Of course, these two theories aren't mutually exclusive. It's very likely that different groups of humans took different paths. Some went inland, chasing the great herds. Others stuck to the coast, feasting on the riches of the sea. Both were valid survival strategies, and both were, at their core, about following the animals. Whether it was a migrating herd of reindeer or a stationary bed of oysters, our path was determined by the location of our next meal. Our relationship with animals on this journey wasn't just about food, it was also about competition. When we moved into Eurasia, we weren't the only major predators on the block. There were cave lions, much larger than African lions. There were hyenas, bears, and packs of wolves. We were competing with them for the same prey, and we were also potential prey for them. This competition would have been a powerful force for innovation. We had to get smarter to survive. We couldn't outrun a lion or outfight a bear, but we could outthink them. We could use fire to keep them at bay from our campsites at night. We could cooperate in large groups to defend a kill. We probably also learned a lot by watching them. Where were the lions hunting? That's where the deer must be. What were the wolves eating? That's what we should try to eat. We were locked in an evolutionary arms race. They got smarter. We got smarter. This brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of the story, our partnership with the wolf. At some point, this competitor became our greatest ally. The story of dog domestication is still debated, but one common theory is that it began with wolves scavenging around human campsites. The less aggressive wolves got more scraps. Over generations, this selected for tamer and tamer animals. Eventually, these proto-dogs became part of the human group. This was a revolutionary partnership. Little dogs could track prey with their incredible sense of smell far better than we ever could. They could chase down faster animals. They could guard our camps at night, their keen hearing alerting us to danger. We, in turn, provided them with a reliable source of food and protection. Together, human and dog became the most formidable hunting team the planet had ever seen. The domestication of the dog may have given us a crucial edge, allowing us to outcompete other hominins like the Neanderthals and to succeed in even the harshest environments, like the Arctic. It is the ultimate example of our relationship with animals evolving from one of just pursuit to one of active collaboration. The evidence for all of this comes from different fields of science that, when put together, paint a compelling picture. Archaeologists dig up the physical proof. They find human settlements layered with animal bones. By identifying the bones, they can tell what people were eating. By looking at the cut marks on those bones, made by stone tools, they can tell how the animals were butchered. The location of these sites tells a story too. A campsite overlooking a valley that was a known mammoth migration route is a huge clue. Then there's genetics. Scientists can analyze ancient DNA from human fossils and modern DNA from people around the world. By tracking genetic markers, they can reconstruct the broad paths of human migration, and they can see how and when different populations split off and moved in different directions. They can do the same thing with animal DNA, and when they overlay the maps of human migration with the maps of ancient animal distributions, they often find a striking overlap. The human journey mirrors the animal landscape. Finally, there's paleoclimatology, the study of ancient climates. By analyzing things like ice cores from Greenland and sediment layers from lake beds, scientists can reconstruct what the Earth's environment was like tens of thousands of years ago. They can pinpoint the exact times when the climate shifted dramatically, and these shifts often line up perfectly with major pulses of human migration. They can see when the savanna corridors opened up or when drought might have pushed people to move. This provides the context, the why behind the movement. It shows us the environmental stage on which this great drama of humans and animals played out. So when we put it all together, what's the final verdict? Did we follow the animals out of Africa? Yes. Overwhelmingly yes. But the word follow is too simple. It implies a passive, thoughtless trailing behind. Our journey was anything but passive. We followed them in the most direct sense, as mobile larders of meat, fat, and protein. Their migrations drew us across continents, pulling us into new and unfamiliar territories. We followed them as walking hardware stores, their bodies providing the raw materials for clothing, shelter, and tools, which were the only way we could survive in the colder, harsher climates of the north. We followed them as guides, their ancient knowledge of the land showing us the safest paths, the hidden water sources, and the most fertile valleys. But we also competed with them and with the other predators that hunted them. This competition sharpened our minds and our skills, forcing us to become better hunters, better tool makers, and better communicators. And eventually we began to shape their worlds as much as they shaped ours. We didn't just follow, we managed. We used fire to reshape landscapes, creating more grassland to attract the grazers we wanted to hunt. We drove some species to extinction, we brought others into our fold, domesticating them and creating a new kind of relationship. The long journey of following the herds eventually led to us creating our own. The hunter became the shepherd. This transition marks the end of one chapter of the human story and the beginning of another. The move from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle based on following animals to a settled agricultural one based on controlling them was one of the most profound changes in our history. It led to villages, cities, and the world we know today. But we should never forget that for the vast majority of our time on Earth, we were followers. Our success as a species was not built on our independence from nature, but on our deep, intricate, and total dependence on it. We learned to read the seasons in the flight of birds, to see the promise of rain in the restlessness of a herd, and to find our way in a new world by putting our feet in the tracks of the animals that walked it before us. The story of our global expansion is not just our story, it is a shared story, a co-migration. We walked out of Africa on a path paved by the bones and hoofprints of the animals we followed.